Welcome back, Cat 37 class, CATIA surfacing. Okay, in this video, we're gonna specifically talk about styling. Okay, so if you end up working in a automotive company, they'll have a studio department where they have their clay models of the vehicles, the interior, the seats, the dash, center console, etc., the door panels. So if you ever work again in a studio department, you're gonna hear the word styling a lot, right? And again, comparing it to a haircut, if you get a military haircut, right? You're in the military and the barber takes 30 seconds to give you a functional haircut, right? Quick, and you pay, I don't know, $10, $20 for that 30-second haircut. Hey, the haircut works. It's functional. It's tight, short, right? And now you can go and live your life, right? But if you want to pay extra, you can go to a stylist, right? A stylist is going to charge you a lot more, but they're going to style your hair with some highlights and some nice curvature continuity and most likely with working with longer hair and keeping your hair longer. So think of styling again as a hairstylist. All right, so I'm going to use an example of how to style. So we're going to use the generative shape design workbench and maybe even go into the freestyle so we can access some of these analysis commands. All right, so here's something that's very typical. So you're working in a studio department. Most likely you'll be in the interiors group or the exteriors group. Exteriors work on hood, bumpers, fenders, etc., the exterior of the vehicle for Class A surfacing. And you'll have an interiors group, and they'll design the plastic trims inside the vehicle, the seats, the dash, center console, etc. So even the simple little plastic pieces that you see inside of a vehicle, the plastic pieces you see in the dash or along the floor of the vehicle, little plastic covers. So one good example is a plastic cover that's used on the rails of the seat. So if you're sitting behind the driver and the seat slides along rails, you'll see the metal rails underneath the seat. And just for styling purposes, so to hide the ugly steel functional looking rails, they'll use a little plastic cover to cover it up, and they'll style the piece. Okay, so typically what happens is you're gonna pretty much offload the job to somebody that's gonna make the parts for you. Okay, so you'll have a concept and you pretty much offload it to a smaller company that can do it faster for you, and they'll do the plastic piece for you. So sometimes you'll leave it up to them to actually create the piece. Tell them, you give them the information. Here's the floor, here's the seat or part of the seat, here are the rails. We need a little plastic piece in this area to cover the rail, just so it doesn't show that ugly rail, right? So typically these companies will give you a quick concept and send a model of it to you, whether it's in CATIA, SolidWorks, Alias. They'll send you a quick model that maybe somebody modeled in about an hour, right? So they'll send you a file like this one. And by the way, I'm going to email you this file. Again, this is just a quick example of something that I did work on. So they're going to send you a piece that's not styled. It's going to have round edges, kind of like you see here, right? So somebody used the fillet command and created a radial, a cylindrical shape, right, to create the fillet. So my boss will come up to me and say, hey, here's a piece that we got from the supplier, and yep, we like the part. We just need you to style it. So this is a very common term or scenario. Hey, take this part that the supplier is providing for us that's going to make the part, but we want you to style it, and then we'll send it back to them, and then they can start manufacturing. All right, so I already have this part open. So my job is to clean up the surfaces, try and make it curvature continuous, and clean up all these areas. So I would have to clean up this radius, this radius, this radius. But just to keep this video short, I'm only going to clean up this area, but you would have to clean up all the radial surfaces and style it. All right, so one thing you can do is to extract surfaces and then either extending them, or you can also try and see if you can take it apart, disassemble it, and try and go back to the original surfaces. So that's one option. Or you can always extend. So once we extend the surfaces, then we'll trim it back, and then we'll start the styling. So let me go back to this step. So we're going to extract and extend surfaces, or try and get them back to the parent surface. So this is what we're going to try and accomplish. We're going to try and style the fillets, right? Okay, so let me turn that off. So this is going to be our goal. As shown here, we're going to style it. In other words, we're going to take out the round, circular, arc-shaped fillets, and we're going to style it just like working with parabolas and hyperbolas, right? Because we don't want the customer, in this case, whoever purchases the vehicle, to see where the fillet starts and where it ends, right? So you may want to turn on your... See how we can turn the edges on and off, separating the patches. So this is shading. Then we have shading with edges. Okay, so as you can see here, when you turn off the edges, the tangent lines, it's hard to see where the flat ends and where the curvature starts. Okay, so that's what we're trying to accomplish. Okay, let me turn on the edges back on. All right, so let me hide this and I'll start over from scratch. And let me turn off this analysis. I'm going to hide it. So let's go to the part. Okay, so once again, here's the part. Now, typically when they send you the part, they'll send it as a non-smart element. In other words, they'll take out all the intelligence, all the features. So I'm going to copy this. So typically you wouldn't see all the features, how they were created, sketch, pat, fillets, shell, etc. You would actually see something like, I'm going to right click, paste special. When I do paste special with result, it'll lose its history. So I'm going to hit OK. Okay, so I have two solids. Let me hide. So I did a right click, paste special as a result. Once again, and it created the second part body. So let me hide the original solid. And I hide the original. Okay, there it is. And let me open up the new one. So this is typically what you get. You'll get a solid with the red lightning bolt, meaning it lost its history. So knowledge of self, right? It doesn't know its family tree, right? Doesn't know its history. The first part body has a history, right? Has parents, dependents, grandparents, etc. But this solid has been pretty much... it's like going from a human to a mannequin, right? A mannequin doesn't know where it came from. It doesn't have intelligence, but a human does. So we went from a smart, intelligent human down to a mannequin. Okay, so anytime you see a red lightning bolt on a solid, a surface, a wireframe, curved point plane, that means it lost knowledge of self. Okay, so typically you'll get something like this, right? All right, so your boss will tell you, hey, we need to style this. All right, so take these boring, round, arc-shaped, radial, circular, cylindrical surfaces, and we're going to style it, right? All right, so let me turn off the edges first. I want to turn off the edges and just go shading. So even though we turn off the edges, you can kind of tell by the light reflection where the flat surface ends and then it goes circular, right? Cylindrical in shape, and then it ends and it goes flat. So even though we don't see the edges physically, we can actually tell by the way the lights reflect, right? We can tell where the flat surface is and where the round surface is based on the reflection of the light on the part. Okay, so this is considered boring. It's considered ugly. So now let's style it, right? Okay, so we're going to start by extracting surfaces. Let me turn on the edges back on. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to first insert a geoset, insert a new geoset. Once again, I will email you this part for those of you that want to practice styling. There is no assignment for styling, but I do like to cover this topic for those that are interested in going into automotive. Okay, so I insert a new geometric set. And let me reset my toolbar. So I'm currently in Freestyle, and I'm going to move over to Generative Shape Design and bounce between the two. Let me right click on any icon, customize, and I'm going to reset my toolbars. Go to Toolbars. I'm going to restore the position to the default position. Okay. And close. Okay, there they are. So there's all my toolbars for Freestyle. Okay, so now I'm going to take this model. And by the way, I can jump between part design, freestyle, and generative shape design. So let's go to generative shape design. And then we'll come back to freestyle to do analysis. So when you're creating a surface, it's very common to be jumping between generative shape design and freestyle. The big automotive companies, they typically have the IT support to be able to merge both workbenches into one, so you don't have to be bouncing between the workbenches. But those are the big companies that can afford the IT support to make this happen. All right, so we're going to be bouncing back and forth. All right, so we're going to extract the surface. So I'm going to start by extracting the flat surfaces. So here's the extract command. So what we can do is extract. Let me extract one surface first, and then I'll do the others. So I'm going to extract one surface. Make sure you are in your geoset that you just created. Okay, let me change the color of the geoset. I'm going to go with the softer color, and I'll go with the green color. All right, so once we extract the surface, one thing we can do is use some of the commands to try and bring back its parent surface. So even though this solid has no history, it lost its family tree. It's like getting hit in the head and you forget who you are, right? But maybe you can try and remember a few things. So if we go back to extract, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to untrim. Let me first try to untrim, see if it works. So I'm going to untrim the extract surface, the green surface. Okay, so I'm going to, let's see what it gives us first. Hit OK. And OK. So see how it, even though it didn't give us the complete surface, I was hoping it would extend beyond. It gave us something, right? So it's trying to recreate itself, right? Or trying to recreate its parents, the parent surface. Okay, so this is the dependent. And this is the, at least some version of a parent, right? That this extract depended on. So even though we didn't get the full extended version of it, I was hoping it would go up to this surface. That's okay, we can work with it. All right, so let's do the same thing on the other side. We're going to extract that surface. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing. Hey, let's untrim. So again, we're trying to go back to its parent surface. Some history, right? Trying to remember where we came from. So untrim that green surface. And it's telling me, hey, I can give you something, Let's take a look at it. And okay. Okay, so cool, I can work with that. So what I'm going to do is hide the original extract surface. So those are still on in the background. So currently we have surfaces on top of each other. Let me hide the extract. And let me hide the one on this side, the extract. Okay, there it is. So anytime you see bleeding like this, where we see, in this case, green and gray, that's basically telling us that they're exactly on top of each other. Okay, anytime you see bleeding of colors from one to the other. All right, so now let's do this one. Extract. Okay. And we're going to untrim. See if it'll extend for us. Okay, it's giving us a warning. Maybe it's not going to give us what we want. Hit OK. And in this case, it didn't extend. So for us, in this case, it didn't work out for this surface. It didn't extend beyond. So I'll just go ahead and delete it. And I'll just work with the extract. So I'm going to delete this one, the untrim. It didn't extend as I was hoping it would. Okay, so to save time, I'm not going to do the same thing for each patch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extract this surface, or I can always extend it. Okay, so what I will do is extend this one. The others, I can just extend the edges. Okay, so I'm going to take this patch. I'm going to extract it. And I'm going to untrim it. And OK. And see if it'll extend for us. And OK. And it did extend for us. OK, great. All right, so now I should follow along with the others, but I'm just going to save time and I'm just going to extract all of them in one shot. By the way, when the supplier provides you with their concept of the ugly looking plastic cover for the seat rails, right, with circular fillets, somebody probably took them about an hour or a few hours to create this. Now, in comparison to styling, how long is that going to take? Again, it's like a haircut, right? You can go for the 30-second haircut from the barbershop, or you can go to a stylist where they're going to spend an hour or hours working on your hair, right? In styling, if something like this takes you an hour to model up with ugly fillets, to style it, expect it to take sometimes 10 times longer. So like 10 hours, and you would think, whoa, that's not cost effective, but that's part of the studio department's, part of their function is to make a beautiful looking Class A surface, whether it's exterior or interior, and they will spend the thousands of hours and hire a bunch of stylists to work on the exterior and interior Class A surfaces. The amount of time and surfacing that they do it's a lot of hours. Okay, so when you're given a project like this, they'll give you a lot of time to work on it until you get it right. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and extract these surfaces, and I'll do it in one shot. So we do have the multiple extract. Multiple extract will extract patches, and we'll also join them as one. Okay, so I'm going to go multiple extract. Okay, so I'm going to extract them. The cool thing about this is that you can say, hey, tangent continuity, and it can extend beyond. See if I go tangent continuity, and it'll keep going all over the place, right? But I don't want all of it, so, oh, my mistake, I did point continuity. So it continues on until it loses point continuity. Let's go tangent continuity. Yep, keeps going. So this is tangent. Watch when I go curvature continuity. It's like, okay, there is no curvature continuity. Okay, so I'm just going to go to no propagation. No propagation. All right, so then I'm going to keep selecting the surface I'm going to use, and there it is, and OK. All right, so we have the extracted surfaces. Now I'm going to join it with this piece here. So I'm going to join it with this extract. So these are separate pieces. So I'm going to join them. So I'm going to hit the join command and join this piece with the ones that we just extracted, the multiple extract, and OK. All right, so this joined, right? We joined all these top surfaces. Now I'm going to extend them. All right, so I'm going to use extrapolate. Now it should be a simple extension of the surface because it's a very simple surface. There's no compound surfaces here. It's pretty straightforward. So I'm going to use extrapolate. So extrapolate, and I'm going to pick an edge. So I can extrapolate just this edge, or I can say, hey, I want to go all the way around. Okay, so I'm going to go to, let's see, extremities. Oh, my mistake, not extremities. Actually, I should extract all the edges first. So my mistake, I thought I was going to be able to do all of it in one shot. I was hoping I had the option to go all the way around. Okay, so let me cancel that. I need to do an extra step, cancel. So I'm going to get the entire profile of this joint. So I did miss that step. So go to extract, but except we're going to use boundary. So boundary extracts the whole edge of the surface. Go to boundary. Okay, select the surface. And you can see it's going to select the entire boundary. And okay. Now I'm going to extend that boundary. Let me change the color for my curves. Right-click Properties on the GeoSet. I'll keep the surface green, and I'll keep the edges and wire. Actually, I'm going to leave the edges alone. My wireframe, the third option is for wireframe. I'm going to make it cyan, and I'll make them thicker. Okay. Okay, so now you can see the cyan wireframe. Okay, so now we're going to extrapolate that. Okay, so let's go back to extrapolate. Extrapolate. We're going to pick the boundary. See, now it extrapolates everything, right? It's extrapolating outward. Wow, okay, pretty cool, right? Okay, and that's what I was looking for. And this is not the only way of approaching this, but it's one way. So here we go, okay. Right? And how much do we extend? I recommend you extend as much as you can, right? It's always better to have extra material. In the end, we're going to end up trimming it off. Okay, so you can always increase the quantity. It's better to have excess because later on you're going to trim it anyway. One thing you don't want is to go short, then later on the part changes and the extrapolation was too short to accommodate the change. So it's always better to way overextend. All right, so there's our surface. Okay, so now we're going to extend the one at the bottom here. We're going to do the exact same thing, except we're only going to extrapolate this edge. Let me turn off the solid temporarily. So I'm going to turn off the solid, hide it. Okay, so now we're going to extend this edge of this cylindrical surface. Extend it. And again, extend. It's better to go overboard on the extension. So there it is, extrapolate. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing with these edges. I'm going to extrapolate. So I want to go beyond this surface. So I'll do the same thing with this edge. Extrapolate it. Okay, and do the same thing with the other side. Extrapolate. And okay. All right, so now we're going to join these vertical walls. We're going to join them. So I'm going to hit the join command and join the vertical walls. And okay. Okay, so now we have join number 3, right? There it is. And then we have extrapolate 9. All right, there's extrapolate 9. All right, so now we need to trim off the excess. So let's go back to our lecture here. So here we have some similar looking, right, extensions. Not exactly like I did this for one of my first lectures a few years back, but it's good enough. All right, so now let's move on to the next step. So next step is to trim off the excess. Okay, so let's trim off the excess. All right, so I'm going to trim the top surface. Okay, so I'm going to trim the top surface first. Trim it off. Trim. With this surface. Okay, there it is, right? It's removing the excess. You can always click the portion you want to keep I want to keep the inside and OK. And the parent surfaces are in the background, as you can see. They're in the background. This, what you see here, is what I did for one of my old lectures a few years back. I'm just recreating it. All right, so now let's do the same thing with this one. We're going to trim this one out, the vertical walls. So join number 3. I'm going to split with the top surface. All right, it's going to remove the top portion. Notice how it's transparent. If you want to keep the top, click on the top. If you want to keep the bottom, the opposite side, click on it, and there it is. All right, so let's go ahead and do some styling. Okay, so even though I consider myself a surfacing expert, I'm not a styling expert. Okay, so when I first went to work for an automotive studio company, yeah, I know the CATIA, I know the commands, I know the surfacing, I know the generative shape design, I do know the freestyle, right? And I know analysis. But I didn't apply some of it correctly, or I didn't understand the styling part of it. So that's where the senior, stylists, so a lot of the senior stylists have 10, 20, 30 years experience. They're styling experts. They may not be design experts as far as structural or tool design or manufacturing, but when it comes to surfacing styling, they're the experts. So there's always somebody leading the group that's considered a styling expert, a supervisor, or a lead. So one of the little tricks I did learn from these styling experts is, all right, so now we got to style this, right? We don't want boring, round, cylindrical surfaces for our fillets. We want to style it hyperbolic, parabolic looking, right? Okay, so one of the little tricks that I did learn working for a studio department is, what you want to do is you want to extract the edge where the two surfaces intersect. And what we want to do is create a tube that goes around. So why do we need this tube? Okay, so this tube, what it does, it gives us a constant offset. So from this center curve, so this is the axis of the tube. Okay, so this axis, by creating a tube, it's going to intersect the top surface and it's going to intersect the vertical surface. Okay, so then we're going to intersect the tube with the horizontal surface, or I should say the top surface and the vertical surfaces. And we can then trim back. So if I go back, or forward I should say, we're then going to take the tube, intersect it with the vertical walls. That's where we get the blue line. And then we'll intersect it with the top surfaces. Get that intersection, right? And move on to the next slide. And then the next step will be to style it. And we have the styling fillet. Okay, and we have other options. All right, so let's go back. Let's create a tube. All right, so I'm going to extract this edge all the way around. So I'm going to extract. I can also use boundary. Let's go ahead and use boundary. It's faster. So boundary. Okay, I want to extract the boundary of the top surfaces, or the top hatches. There it is. But I want to go from this point. So I'm going to pick this point. So I'm going to limit the boundary I'm extracting. So I'm going to click that point and click this point. So those are my limits, right? Notice it's going to only extract this portion and not this portion. You can always flip it. There's a red arrow. I know it's hard to see, but there's a red arrow that you can click on and it'll pick the opposite side, or its complementary side. Let's go back to the red arrow, click on it, and it'll flip it and hit OK. All right, so now we're going to create a tube going along this boundary or extracted edge. Okay, you can draw a circle at this center point or this center point. That's one option. You can draw a circle, and then we can do some type of sweep. I'm going to do it a different way. I'm going to use the sweep command. Instead of using a profile, and a path. Sweep command will take care of that. That way I don't have to draw the circle. The sweep will take care of it. So I'm going to go to sweep. One of my favorite commands, sweep. Okay, so we're going to go to the circular option up here. Okay, so go to circular. So that way we don't have to draw a circle. Okay, so I'm going to go to the drop down and say, hey, I want a center and radius. There it is, center and radius. So the center is the curve we just extracted, the boundary, right? So our center curve is our boundary. There it is. And now we need to give it a radius. I should have checked the radius first. So let me hit preview. I don't know if 19 is too much. Let me hit preview. Okay, so there's our tube. Okay, so how much of a radius do we use? Okay, so let me hit OK, and then I'll come back to it. I'm going to hit OK. Okay, so I should have measured the radius on the solid. So let me hide this geoset temporarily. I'm going to hide it. Don't panic. We didn't lose it. It's in the background. Go to the no-show layer, right? It's in the background. There it is. Let's go back to the solid. So here's the solid. So let's take a measurement. I think this is in millimeters. It doesn't matter if we go millimeters or inches. I'll leave it up to you. So this is 12.7 millimeters, which happens to be ½ inch. Okay, so let me change my units and go over to inches. Doesn't matter. But I did create this using inches. So let me go to Tools Options. And let's go to General, Parameters and Measure. Go to Units. And instead of using for length millimeters, I'm going to use inches. It doesn't matter, but that's what I use. Those are the units I use to create this. All right, so now let's take a measurement again. I'm going to use my calipers to measure. And you can see this is ½ inch. Okay, so ½ inch. Okay, so here's one of the rules. When you create the tube, you're going to make it slightly larger. So instead of using a tube that's going to intersect in this area here, we're actually going to go slightly beyond. We're going to go about, I think it's about 20% if I remember correctly. So this is the styling expert will tell me, hey, when you create the tube, make the tube about 20% larger than the original radius. Okay, so instead of 0.5, I'm going to use, I don't know, 0.6 or 0.625. Okay, so I'll go slightly larger on the radius. Okay, so let me cancel. Let me turn on the geoset back on. Okay, so let me double click on the tube. Okay, so if I go with 0.5, the original radius, 0.5, hit preview. We can see that it lines up with the solid, right? So here's the solid. Let me click on the Y on the, I'm going to click the Y here on the axis to orient it. There it is. That's a side view or lower to the Y or parallel to the Y. Okay, so you can see our tube intersects where the tangency starts. So I'm going to increase this by 20%. I'll go 0.6 or maybe 0.65. So I'll go 0.6. Preview. Yeah, just go slightly beyond the original tangent line. So we're going to go beyond. And the reason is because we want to start shaping it. Let's take a step back and go with a conic shape, right? Parabolic, hyperbolic in shape. If we start here, it's going to be too sharp. So we want to start a little further back. Okay, so I'm going to hit OK. I'll accept the 0.6. Again, that's about 20% larger than the original 0.5 inch radius fillet. All right, so let me go ahead and hide the solid again. Hide it. All right, so now we're going to intersect. Okay, so we're going to intersect the tube with the vertical walls, and then we'll intersect it with the top surfaces. Okay, so let's use intersect. If I can find intersect, there it is, intersect. And again, if you can't find one of the commands that you're looking for, first make sure you're in the correct workbench. We are in GeoSet, right? Geometric Shape Design. You can also, another way is to go to the drop down and look for intersect, right? So that's another option, right? Okay, so intersect, we're going to intersect the tube with the vertical wall. Okay, and hit OK. And there's the intersect. Okay, there it is. Now we're going to do the same thing and intersect the tube again with the top surface. So let's do intersect again. Intersect the tube with the top surface and OK. Okay, so there we have it. Okay, so let's hide some of the supporting geometry. I'm going to hide the tube. I'm going to hide the boundary that we extracted earlier. Okay, so I'm going to hide the boundary. That's the center of the tube. Okay, let me hide some other stuff. Let me hide this other boundary that we extracted earlier. It's okay if you hide it. You can always come back to it, right? You can always come back. It's in the background. All right, so now we're going to do some styling. So yes, it's time consuming, but it's part of the game, okay? So if you want to become a stylist, you need to have patience, and you will be given the time to style it, okay? In this case, this little plastic cover. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start joining things, but before I do, let me trim off this excess. So I'm going to put a plane at this point. So I'm going to use the plane command. I'm going to go normal to curve, normal to curve. So here's my curve. Or I can pick this edge here. It doesn't really matter. So I'll pick this edge and pick this point. There it is, and OK. Okay, so I'm going to use this plane to trim off the excess. So I'm going to take this one and I'm going to split. Should have done this earlier. That's okay. Take care of it now. Split it. I want to keep the left side portion of it, and OK. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the intersect. In this case, intersect 5. I'm going to also trim that or split with the plane. I want the inside portion or the left side, so let me click other side. There it is. And there it is. Okay, so just removed some of the excess. Should have done that earlier. Okay, I'm going to hide the plane. Okay, so now we're going to do some styling. So before we do, we need to trim off the excess. We don't have to, but it's just easier to work with to remove excess, and it doesn't block our vision as we're creating our fillet. Okay, so we can actually start styling, but the excess surface is going to get in our way visually. So I'm going to now take the vertical walls and I'm going to split with this intersection, right? Okay, so let's remove the excess and OK. I'm going to do the same thing with the top surfaces. I'm going to click on it and I'm going to split it with this intersect, which we actually ended up splitting to shorten it. And OK. And there it is. Okay, so now we can start styling. Oh, I missed this portion. So this one, this was an extract from earlier that I forgot to hide. So actually it did do it. Let me just hide this extract. I forgot to hide some of my supporting geometry. Let me hide this. There it is. Okay, so this is a child of this portion that we extracted from the beginning. I just forgot to hide it. Okay, there it is. All right, so now we can start working on our fillet. And let me turn on the solid one more time just to show you how far back we're going. Okay, so instead of starting our fillet at the tangent line of the solid, we're stepping back, right? About 20%, maybe 25%, and we're going to start styling. All right, so let's go ahead and use the styling command. And there's also other options. We don't have to use the styling, or my mistake, the styling fillet command. Let's go back. Okay, so we can do the styling fillet command. That's one option. So that way it allows us to control the curvature, whether it's tangent continuity, which is G1, right? G0 are sharp edges, sharp creases, right? G0 is point continuity. G1, tangent continuity. G2, curvature continuity. The radius as you exit one patch equals the radius as you enter the second patch. And then we have G3, curvature continuity, where the acceleration as you exit one patch equals the acceleration as you enter the second patch. Okay, so let's go ahead and attempt styling. And by the way, there are other options for styling. We can also use blend. Okay, we can also use lofting, the multi-section loft command. So there's other ways of creating this. Okay, so let's go back. So your first attempt will be, hey, let's style it. Don't always expect it to work. Expect things to go wrong. It will not be a nice, clean transition as it travels along. One of the biggest headaches in modeling, whether it's CATIA or any other surfacing or even solid modeling, it can be Unigraphics, SolidWorks, Alias, any other software. One of the biggest headaches are the fillets. When you do a straight fillet, if it's a simple straight fillet like you see here, it's not an issue. But when it's traveling and turning and sometimes it doesn't know which direction to go, it's going to give you error messages, and it also eats up a lot of memory. So it's generating a shape as it's traveling along, and it's eating up a lot of memory as it's generating and going around the curves. Okay, so typically you want to save fillets for the very end, and that's also with solid modeling. And again, it's with edges that have twists and turns, right? You want to save those fillets for the end because you will get error messages. Your computer may freeze up on you. The software may freeze up on you. So expect that on complex fillets. All right, so let's look for the styling fillet. Okay, so here's the styling fillet. If you don't see the styling fillet at work, most likely you don't have the advanced license, or you're going to have to go over to Freestyle Workbench. Okay. Fortunately for the student license and here on campus, we do have the styling option, styling fillet. So let's go ahead and click on it. Okay, so it's asking us for our first support. Okay, so the first window is support. So that's the surface. Okay, so I'm going to pick the top surface as our support 1. Now it's asking us for our second support. I'll pick the vertical surfaces, right, which goes all the way around. Okay, so currently it's set to G0. It's currently set to G0. And let me hit apply and see what we get. Let's see what kind of preview we get. I'm going to hit apply. Notice it has a default radius. Okay, so it remembers the last input. So let me hit apply. I'm expecting an error message, but let's see what we get. Yep. The gap is too large. Let me see what happens if I increase it. I'm going to exaggerate and go to 0.75. See what happens. And apply. Okay, so now it's giving us a fillet. Ta-da! It's like, wait a minute, teacher, that looks like a chamfer. That don't look like no fillet. And it's because we're at G0, right? So here at 0.75, I believe is the distance from edge to edge. I may be wrong on that, but so it is creating a radius, but because we're using G0, it's actually trying to adjust itself. So I believe the distance from where it starts, here it is, edge to edge. So we actually don't have that edge. Our edges are up here, right, where we see the cyan. So it's just creating its own edge while trying to accomplish G0 continuity between the two surfaces. And following the parameter, the radius 0.75. So this is our input. If we were to reduce it, you're going to see these dark edges move as I reduce it. I'm going to hit preview, see if it accepts it, apply. See how the edge moved inward because I reduced the radius. Now, once again, we're getting a straight, and let me go ahead and hit OK. And by the way, we do have the option to trim off the excess. Okay, so any excess, it'll trim it off. Let me go ahead and turn on that option. And let's hit apply and hit OK. So notice it did combine all three surfaces, right? With G0, meaning it's going to have a crease. That's not what we're looking for, but that is G0, ladies and gentlemen. G0 continuity. It joined all three surfaces, but it has a sharp crease. And if this is what we wanted, hey, it looks pretty clean, right? Looks like a chamfer. This is G0. We don't want G0. We want to improve on it. So let's go back, double click on it. So we don't want CATIA to define our starting edge. We have our cyan lines, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to, let me cancel, let's see. Okay, there it is. I was looking for this. So we're going to pick our cyan wireframe as our starting edges for the fillet. Okay, so let's go back and double click on our styled fillet. All right, so let's go back to our first report, which is the top surface. And we're going to go over to this option. Well, let me see. Let me go ahead and uncheck trim. Okay, I'm trying to pick an edge. Okay, there it is. I had to click on this icon. I was trying to highlight this area. So it's blue now. It's waiting for me to pick an edge. In this case, we're going to use the cyan wireframe. I just had to click this option to be able to pick an edge. So for the top surface, it's this one. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing for the second support, which is the vertical walls. Okay, so let me pick this edge. So select this icon, select the edge. Notice how the radius is grayed out. So we're not using a radius parameter now. The edges are going to define our radius. Okay, or the wireframe, right? The cyan wireframe, there it is. So it grayed out the radius because now the radius will be defined by our cyan wireframe. Okay, let's hit apply, and you're going to see it move to the cyan edges. Apply, there it is. Okay, now we still have G0 continuity, G for surfaces, C for curves and wireframe, right? All right, so now let's improve on this. Now, by the way, even though it did give us a nice, clean, chamfer-looking edge, sometimes as it's traveling along, there may be errors. The more complex, there may be it may generate the surface, the fillet, in this case the chamfer, because we're using G0 continuity. Sometimes there'll be gaps. Sometimes patches are missing. Sometimes it'll generate some of the surfaces and then it'll jump and create a space, or there's a gap, I should say, that we need to go in and fix. Okay, so now let's improve on the continuity. We're going to go from G0 to G1. Let's go to G1 and apply. Ta-da! Right? So now it's given us a more parabolic or hyperbolic curve, right? Other than elliptical. My mistake. We're G1, so it's actually still circular. So let me correct myself once again. We're at G1, so it's actually going to be more like an arc. Okay. So it's going to be very similar to the solid. We actually want to improve on it. But here we have G1, right? We have G1. Now let's move up to G2. See if it accepts it. It may reject it. Let's go to G2 and apply. So see the difference now? It's actually bowing outward compared to G1. So now we have curvature continuity. The radius as you exit the top surface equals the radius as you enter the next surface, right? If I drop down to G1, let's go back down to G1, tangent continuity, and apply. We've lost that equal radii. Okay, so G1 guarantees tangency as you go from one patch to another, but the radius as you exit does not equal the radius as you enter the next patch. We would have to pick G2. Okay, so we're going to go to G2, and this is your tolerance, how much you're willing to be off by from the exact position of the surface. You can play around with these. Okay, so how much are you willing to sacrifice to get that nice smooth transition? You may lose. I know they're using the word tolerance, and I shouldn't use this word, but exactness. I don't know if it's a word, but either way, how much are you willing to deviate from the exact location of the surface based on your parameters to get that G1 or G2 continuity? All right, so I'm going to jump back up to G2 and watch how the surface changes in this area. Go to G2 and apply. 3, 2, 1. Don't blink. Did you blink? Oh, you blinked, right? Notice how the radius as you exit the surface, zoom in, looks almost equal to the radius as you exit. Okay, so actually this is not a radius. This is a straight line. So think of radius equals infinity and beyond. See, radius is not 1 inch here because it's a straight line. It's not 10 inches. It's a gazillion inches. It's like infinity. It goes on forever, right? Because it's not a radius, it's linear. So that's why it's trying to duplicate it as you exit. It's trying to duplicate this radius that goes on forever. And then it starts rounding off, right? So now the radius drops from infinity down to like 1,000, 100 inches, 10 inches, 5 inches, and 0.5 inches, and increases again. Okay. All right, so that's G2, and hit OK. Oh, and we got an error. Something went wrong. It didn't like something. Oh, did I trim? I think it's because I had the trim option on. Again, this is very common. Let me go back. So something disappeared, right? It didn't like it. I don't know if I had the trim option off. I wanted to keep the support. Let me see. Let me drop back down to G1 and apply. So somehow I lost. I don't know if I'm making a mistake here on my own. I picked an option or I forgot to select an option. Let's drop down back to G0. Apply. So it looks like I have something on and I don't know what it is. If not, I'll start from scratch. Okay, let me go ahead and cancel that. I'm going to cancel it. But we can always come back. Looks like I just hit it by mistake. So it's actually, let's go back in. Let me show split 12. There it is. I think I just hit it by mistake. So yeah, even your instructor makes mistakes. Yeah, so okay, so let's move on. All right, so we'll keep it at G2. Apply. And okay. Okay, there it is. All right, so we have our styling. Okay, so I think it's because I didn't pick the trim option. It didn't join all three. So the styling is seen as one entity. That's okay. We can always join it. I'll go back to styling and pick the trim option and it'll join it. Okay, let's go back. Either one, either way will work. Let's go back to styling. And I'm going to click the trim option, which should join them and remove any excess. We don't have any excess, but let's see if it works. Okay. And yeah, now it's all one entity. Okay. So by hitting the trim option, it removes excess and joins everything as one. Let me hide the intersect number 4, and split 10. All right, so ta-da, that is styling. Beautiful, right? Now, before doing this styling, I would have to first do the styling on these two surfaces first, before doing the tube and then styling the surfaces, but I didn't want to spend a lot of time on this. Just want to give you a general idea of what styling is. Okay, now just when you think you're done, the next step is to analyze it. It's like, hey, Looks awesome. Let me turn off the edges. Just go to shading. See how it's harder to tell where the fillet starts? Because we have a nice smooth transition. So this is styling. Look at the way the lights reflect off the fillets. Okay, so that's one thing you do have to do is check the reflections. All right, so let me turn it back on, the edges. Okay, so once you think you're done, you're supposed to go back and analyze it. Okay, so let's go with the lecture notes. And by the way, we could have also used a blend. We could have blended just like we did the styling fillet. If styling doesn't work, then try another option. And again, this is very common. It's like, well, let me try styling. Oh, it didn't work. It didn't give me what I wanted. It twisted on me. Some of the patches are missing as it's generating the fillet. So try blend. You can do the exact same thing like we did with styling fillet. We can use our wireframe, the cyan wireframe, and our top surface, bottom surface, and the cyan wireframe to do the exact same thing. Okay, so you do have that option. Actually, let me go ahead and do it. I want to do this just to show that it can be done. Let me hide this one. Okay, let's go back. And let me turn on the cyan wireframe. Oh, wrong one. Okay, so we can do the blend. Okay, so blend is awesome. Even though it can be used for other purposes, blend is typically to blend surfaces. But don't forget, blend is also useful for creating surfaces like the wing, because it gives you a nice clean ruled surface. Okay, so let's go to blend. So just like styling, we can say, hey, I want my first curve. It's just you do things out of order. Things look a little different, but our first curve, let's pick the top one, the top wireframe. And then we can pick our support. Our support will be the top surface. And then we can move on to the second curve. So again, we're using the blend command. And then pick our second surface. Make sure the red arrows are pointing in the same direction or else it's going to twist on you. So notice they're both pointing in the positive Y direction with respect to the axis. Okay, so let's hit preview. And see, this is blend is not giving us exactly what we were looking for, right? But that is an option. Now you can also add points, closing points, and coupling. You can couple point to point to clean up these areas. Okay, so we can do once again coupling to say, hey, I want this curve here, which is going all over the place, to match. I want this point to match this point to match that point, and so on. So you can use coupling. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of this. I just wanted to show you that it can be done using blend. We just have to include a few more supporting elements like coupling. All right, let's go back to the basic tab. So in basic, we can control, do we want tangency continuity or point continuity? If we go to point, preview, it's going to look flat, as you can see. Let's go back to point for the second one. Preview, it's going to look like a chamfer, right? Just like on the styling fillet. So this is G0. That's point continuity from one surface to the fillet, and then for the second, from the fillet to the second surface, point continuity. Or we can go curvature, right? G2, curvature continuity, preview. All right, so let me cancel out of that. And there's a few other options, like we can also use multi-section loft, right? So that's another option. So you have more than one option to generate that fillet. Okay, I'll cancel out of that. Okay, let me go back and let me hide everything in here. So a quick shortcut to hide all the geometry, you right click on the geo set, go down to the eyeball, the closed eye, right? Here it is, hide all components in that geoset. Then I can go in and just show the styling fillet. There it is. Okay, so now we need to analyze it. Okay, so that's the next step. Okay, so everything's already joined for us because we chose the trim option when we did the styling. We clicked on the trim option, which removes excess and joins all surfaces involved in that fillet. All right, so now let's do a checker analysis, right? Okay, so it'll check for overlaps. Okay, so when you do the analysis, make sure that all the surfaces are joined as one entity, which we already have. It'll check for overlaps on the patches. It'll check for gaps. So if there's a little tear between the seams, right, whether it's a tailored suit or a wedding dress, right, you don't want a separation between the patches or else it may increase and make it worse. All right, and then we have G1. We want to check for G1, and you can also check up to G2 and G3 continuity. And we may have to turn on these options to be able to see the analysis. Okay, so let's go back. Okay, so let's go to Freestyle. I'm going to go to Freestyle. Even though I think we actually do have Connect Checker, I don't see it. Let me right-click on any icon. I'm going to right-click on any icon to look for the Analysis toolbar. Whoop, misclicked. My mistake. Let me hit Escape. I misclicked. Right-click on any icon and look for the Analysis. See, it's turned off. There's Analysis. Okay, I don't see where it loaded. Probably somewhere down here, buried in the bottom. So we should have an Analysis toolbar in here somewhere. So I gotta dig out these toolbars first. And there it is. Okay, so as you can see, for generative shape design, the Analysis toolbar is limited or collapsed, I should say. So now let's double click on the top of the toolbars, double click, and it'll dock it back in place. Double click, double click. You can always right click and customize to reposition all your toolbars back to the default position. Okay, so let me take out this toolbar. Okay, so actually we do have a lot more options than what I expected. All right, so if you don't see all these options, chances are you have the basic license and not the full-on license. Okay, so we have Connect Checker. Okay, so let's do Connect Checker analysis on this styling fillet. And by the way, all the surfaces are joined, right? So let's pick it. Okay, so let's see if we can turn on. Okay, I want to check for. Let's go to G1 first. Okay, we want to check surface to surface, patches. I got to make sure I click on every option or else it's not going to light up what I'm looking for. I think I got to pick this option. Let me hit OK and see what happens. Got to double check, make sure. Oh, I got to check for overlaps. Forgot to turn that one on also. Hit OK. And let's see. Let me go back. I think I missed something. So I got to turn this one on. Turn these two on. Turn that on. Turn this one on. Now I'm going to go to the quick one, the quick analysis instead of the full analysis. Let's go back and double click on that Connect Checker analysis. Oh, I don't see the quick option. Let me go back to G1. Oh, it's not turning this option on. It looks like I'm missing something here. Go back. Okay, I'm going to uncheck this option, see what happens. Now I can always go back to one of my earlier ones. Okay, it's not giving me what I want. Let me go back to the original one I did on one of my old lectures. Let's see what options I have turned on. So I have G1 turned on. None of these are on. I have G1 here. Oh, display. Maybe I'm missing the display. Okay, I gotta turn this one on, these two on, and this one on. Okay, let me take a screenshot so I can compare and contrast. All right, so I'm gonna go back. Let me exit this Connect checker that I did on a previous lecture. Let's go to our new one. Okay, so this is the new one here. Double click. Okay, so I need to go to display type. Here it is, display type. Have G1 on. Oh, looks like it's not turning on here. Gotta turn this one on. And let's see, hit OK, see if it gives us anything. Nope, still not giving us anything. Let me compare it to our screenshot. Okay, these are off, that's on. That one's on, that one's on. The G1 is not lighting up. Okay, so actually G1 here is not pressed. Let me turn this one off. Oh, still not giving us the analysis. G1, display. Got the same gap size, the same. Oh, this one's not pressed. So I missed this one over here. Okay, let's go back. And there it is. Ta-da! Woo! I thought I wasn't going to get it. All right, let's continue on with this lecture. All right, so we're almost done. So sorry if I put you to sleep. So here it's showing me all the errors, right? So this fillet didn't go as clean as we were hoping. Again, this is very common. Now, I didn't want all this ugliness. Usually it's just a few areas. So let me see what happens if I pick overlap. Let's check for overlap. And okay, nope, no overlap. So there's no overlap, so that's good. Okay, let me go back to G1 continuity. And let's go back to our screenshot. I want to make sure we're matching the same numbers. Okay, so let me drop this down to 0.17 degrees. 0.17. Okay, let me hit OK. Double click on this one. Okay, so for some reason I like that number. Let's go back. Okay, so we have our display filter, right? So if you look here on my original Connect checker analysis that I did on a previous lecture, notice for my G1, next to G1 it says 0.17 degrees. Okay, so you have to get these numbers from your department or from the styling expert. You have to see how much you're willing to deviate from. And I don't remember those numbers off the top of my head. Let's go back to the tutorial. Maybe I have it in here. Yep, here it is. So the lead surfacing expert in your department or somebody in the department will come up with the numbers that we're allowed to deviate from. So how much can we be off by and yet accept the results. Okay, so 0.17 seems to be what's acceptable if I remember correctly from my styling days for G1. And for G0, what's acceptable? Any gap, as long as it's smaller than this number, it still seems kind of big for a gap there. I just don't remember exactly off the top of my head what it was. Okay, so actually on this one I used 0.05 degrees for G1, 0.004 inches on the gap, which actually sounds pretty large. Should be smaller than that, maybe 0.0004. All right, so let me continue on. Okay, so let me reduce this to 0.05, see what we get. And okay. And let's double click again. Make sure we got all the same buttons checked. All right, so everything seems to be in place. So it looks like this one is nice and clean. Except the 0.05. Let's see if we reduce it to 0.01 and click away. Okay, so as you can see, we're actually pretty good, 0.05 or 0.17 degrees. Again, I don't remember the exact number, but at 0.01, it starts giving us some error messages, as you can see. But once we increase up to 0.05 degrees and click away, it ignores anything below 0.05. If we go 0.001, something a lot smaller, 0.001, and click away. Okay, it seems so good. Let's go with another 0.0001 and click away. Okay, so far it's not that bad. Actually, I was expecting a lot more. And again, I don't remember the exact angle, but let's say we accept this and say, okay, we'll accept the consequences, hit okay. So now what we have to do is go in and fix these errors. So how do we fix these errors? All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna hit join. Yep, we're gonna hit the join command, and we're gonna remove some of these portions and recreate them. Now, one option is to draw a line on a surface or support and draw another line here. We can put a point here, a point there. We can put the pointer and then project it over to this one to create our projection point, and then we can draw a line and remove these patches or this area and recreate it. So that's one option. Another option is to completely remove a patch. So I'm going to do both. I'm going to go ahead and remove this entire patch, and here I'm just going to remove a portion of it. And how do you decide? Is just a matter of preference or experience. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit join, and obviously this is already joined together, but in the join area there's remove sub-elements. Okay, so I'm going to go to sub-elements here. Okay, and then I'm going to remove this portion of it. I'm going to remove that patch and preview, and see it's going to remove it, and hit OK, and it removed that area. Okay, so let me turn off this connect checker. Turn that off. Okay, so now we got to fix this area. We can use fill command. We can use blend. We can use, actually blend in this case will not work because blend can only handle 2 edges and not 4. Okay, so you have a few options. Again, we can use blend. My mistake, fill command to fill this area. Okay, and we're going to pick a support. That's our support. Then go on to the next one, either go clockwise or counterclockwise. Pick our support. Pick edge, pick support, and pick edge and support. And preview. Okay, so we do need to pick supports, right? So that way we can control the continuity. Or else it'll just fill the 4 edges and ignore the surrounding surface. So that's why we had to pick supports. And now we can control it, right? We can say, hey, for the first support, we want curvature continuity. For the second support, we want tangent continuity. So you're going to have to play around with the continuity. Do you want tangent, curvature? What all depends what's going on the surrounding areas. It's preferred that we go curvature, but sometimes based on the surrounding areas, it will not accept it. Let's hit preview. Okay, so we got to look at the lights, how they reflect off the surface. Sometimes you get something that's not desirable. You're going to have to go in there and either change the continuity, or break it up into pieces and create multiple patches. Okay, so let's just say I accept that, hit OK. Then I would have to join the join for with the new fill. I would have to join it and do another connect checker. Okay, so I'd have to check it all over again. If that doesn't work, then I would have to try a different approach. Let me hide fill. I'm going to hide the fill command. And another option is to use multi-section loft. Multi-section. So you can either loft from this edge to this edge, or that edge to this edge. You have to try different combinations, see which one is better. I'll try this edge with a support to this edge with the support. Let's hit preview. Hit OK. Notice it's twisting because the red arrows are not pointing in the same direction. We have a red arrow going downward and we have this one going upward. So I need to flip one of the red arrows and preview. Okay, that's better. And we should add guides. So I'm going to pick guides. So I'm going to pick this edge as my guide with support. And do the same thing with this edge to guide it along with support. And preview. And it seems to accept it. Now, I didn't give it a spine, so it generated its own spine. Again, like the spine in your back, right? It gives it stiffness, right? Have a spine, have a backbone, right? Stand up straight, son, right? So, same idea. Since I didn't define a spine, it calculated its own. I can actually pick the Y direction on the axis for the spine. And OK. Okay, so that actually looks a little bit cleaner than the fill command. All right, so now let's move on to this side. So this side had a bad area. So this connect checker is for the original joined styled fillet. So now we would have to clean this area up. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a little patchwork. So again, it's like having a tear on your brand new tailored suit or your wedding dress, right? Or your fancy dress, and you're trying to clean it up, get rid of that flaw. All right, so let's go ahead and remove a portion of this. We can either remove a portion here and a portion there, or do one side or the other, or a combination. I'll just keep it simple. All right, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to add a point here along the curve. I'm going to hit OK. It's hard to see the point. Let me change my geo set so I can actually see the point. That's a little hard to see. So let me go yellow and rectangular for my points and hit OK. So now you can see that point that I just created. So I'm going to project it over to this edge. Okay, so I'm going to use project. I'm going to project the point I just created, project it onto this edge, and preview, and there it is. So it projects it normal, perpendicular. Okay, and then we can use the line command to connect the 2 points. So using line command. And right now it's a straight line, so we can pick support on support. There it is. See how it curved it? So now it's lying on the surface. So make sure you pick a support, in this case, the surface, and OK. So one thing we can do now is remove this area. Okay, so we're going to have to extract edges to have a boundary to use as a trimming element. Okay, so let me pick extract. I need to extract this edge. I need to extract that edge. Oh, let me hit OK and repeat the command. Extract. So I'm using extract for a second time. We're going to have to trim off the excess, and let's do extract again. I could have used multiple extract, save time. All right, so now let me trim off the excess. So I'm going to take this one and trim it off or split, I should say. Don't use trim, use split. I'll split it with this line or the endpoint. Pick the other side. There it is. Then do the same thing with this one. I'm going to split that wireframe with our line and go other side and OK. Okay, so now I can take these four pieces of wireframe, join them. I'm going to join these 4 pieces of wireframe. Okay, so now they're joined. So yeah, we can join wireframe just like we can join surfaces. Okay, so now I'm going to use split command. I'm going to split the surface with this wireframe that we joined and hit OK. And now we're going to go in there and fix the seam, right? Just like on a suit or dress, right? Okay, let's fix it up and we'll do the same thing. We can do fill, we can do multi-section. And then we're going to join all of them. I'm not going to do this, but just to walk you through the process. So after we fix these little patches like we did, so here we did the loft command. Here we can use fill command or multi-section loft, right? And once we patch it up, then we have to join everything again and do another connect checker. Yes, you have to do it multiple times. And yes, this is the part of styling. Again, you go into and get a haircut from a hairstylist. They're going to try some highlights. They're going to trim some areas. You're going to keep looking in the mirror. No, that doesn't look good. Let's trim off the back a little bit more. So we're styling. It takes a lot of time. It's part of the game. It's just the way it is. All right, so one thing I did forget to mention is another option that we can use is isoperimetric curve. So earlier I used the line command, right? A better option is if you have this command, depending on the license you're using. So isoperimetric curve, we can do that. And we can actually click on the surface and it'll generate a curve. Oh, forgot to extract the surface. Let me cancel out of this. Let me pick a different area. I'm going to pick this surface. Let's say we wanted to fix this area. I'm going to extract this surface. Extract. Okay. Let me change the color. Actually, let me hide the join. I'm going to hide this large surface here. Or the split surface. There it is. Okay, so let's say we wanted to trim back on this patch. We can use isoperimetric curve. Click on it. Click on the surface. And this will give you a better curve. And it's creating a curve almost like placing a grid on a surface, or like when you place your grid on the globe, right, representing Earth. Your latitude and longitudes, it spaces it out evenly so it fits like a grid. Okay, so we could have used this and click, and we can always slide it along, as you can see. And now we can use that to trim instead of using the line command on a support. Okay, so that's another option. This option is a lot cleaner. And there's other ways also. Okay, you can also use a spline. So if a line command doesn't give you what you want when it comes to splitting, or this isoperimetric curve doesn't work, you can always use a spline. Okay, so you're going to be playing around back and forth until you get the surface you want. All right, so let's go back. Let me unhide. Okay, so our connect checker is the mirror. You're the client. The stylist will put the mirror in front of you and say, no, I had to remove more hair from the back or from the top and put some more highlights in this area, etc. So now let's go ahead and do a visual check. So we've already covered porcupine curves, right? So porcupine curves will give you a good idea of the type of continuity you have. Is it tangent? Is there an inflection point where it changes direction, like it's shown here when it spikes? It's changing direction. So here it's going counterclockwise, and then it goes clockwise, Then it goes counterclockwise, and that's the reason for the sudden spikes. As you're going down the flat surface, you can accelerate, but as soon as you hit the curve, you decelerate, right? Slow down along the curve, then you accelerate again. Okay, so you are going to hear that term a lot when dealing with stylists. They're going to refer to this as accelerating or decelerating. You can change the intensity of the porcupine. If you want to add more red lines, you can increase or decrease the intensity. You can also change the amplitude of how much it's going to jump up or inward, right? So let's go back. Actually, let's go on. So now we can do an analysis, right? Using highlights to give us a story about the surface. We can also use reflections. So this is typically what you'll use. You'll use the zebra stripes, also known as isophotes mapping analysis, right? To give us a good idea of what type of surface you have. You want nice, clean, parallel lines, and you don't want any breaks on these reflection lines. And I've already covered this in a separate video, so let's go back. I'm actually going to duplicate this in a minute. All right, so I'm going to go back to the original surface, the styling, the one that gave us the arrow. So I'm going to hide this one. I'm actually going to hide everything in here. I'm going to hide it, Windows select, hide, and I'm going to go back to the styling fillet. Okay, let's go back. Yeah, it does have these error messages. Okay, so let's say you fixed it, patched everything up, right? You rejoined it and did a connect check curve again. Okay, you have to do a separate one, a new one. Let's say everything looks clean. The next step is to reflect the light off of it. Okay, so let's go to, oh, I don't see that option. Guess we're gonna have to go to freestyle. We have surfacic curvature option, but I don't see the light reflections. So let's go over to freestyle. Oh, cancel, close. I went to the wrong area. Let's go to freestyle. Okay, so let's go to freestyle and look at the neon lights. All right, so let's see. I'm gonna right click and look for the analysis. Oh, shape analysis is on. Let's see, for some reason oh, there it is up here in the upper corner. Okay, so we're gonna go to the drop down here and we're gonna go with isophotes mapping analysis or neon lights. Click on it. It's telling me, hey, you need to go into material mode, view mode, even though we don't have any material attached. Okay, so that's a warning. So let's go over, let me cancel out of here first and go over to view mode of shading with material, even though we don't have material. All right, so there it is. That's the view mode for shading with material. And now let's go ahead and do the neon lights, isophotes mapping analysis. Okay, and let's pick our surface. And now you can see the way the lights reflect. Okay, so you will be zooming in and checking. You can change the intensity of the lighting. This is a little too much, so let me reduce the intensity. And you want to see how the lights reflect off of the patches, right? So you want to see, as you go from one patch to another, you want to see the reflection line continue on without any breaks. Okay, so here we have nice continuation. It looks like we have curvature continuity. So now you have to, again, play with the lights, with the reflections, and any area where you see the lines breaking or zigzagging and breaking, those are the areas you need to go in and fix. And again, even as something as simple as a little plastic piece, the styling department will make a big deal out of it. They will show you, they will point out these little flaws by reflecting light off of it. And as you transition from one patch to another. So this is something you want to do prior to submitting your work to your boss or to the department or the styling manager. All right, so let me cancel out of this. All right, so I'm going to email you this part. For those of you that choose to play around with it, again, there's no assignment for this lecture. This is just for those of you that want to practice your styling. You can do it on your final project, on your student project, or even beyond this class, okay? So some of you will be working in a studio department, and I recommend that you go back to some of the tutorials that are provided for you on that tutorial website and practice your styling and practice your analysis. Oh, one thing I do want to go over again one more time is the porcupine. So let me do a porcupine on one of these cyan curves. Okay, so don't panic when I show you the porcupine. Here we go. Let's go porcupine. And notice how it seems to be going all over the place, right? So anytime you have a straight line, it goes on forever, right? It goes on forever. So in styling, we try and avoid having straight lines. We actually want a little bit of curvature to it. Notice here how the green line breaks. So here we have the green line going, then all of a sudden it breaks. That's because it goes straight. So this is a straight line. So typically you don't want that in styling. You want a smooth transition. So this is telling me that this here, as you transition from here to here, it's tangent. We're trying to avoid tangent continuity. We're trying to get curvature continuity. If this would have been curvature continuous, this green line would have curved and then lined up with the linear surface, or I should say straight surface, the cylindrical area. Okay, so we would actually want this green line to curve as it goes, if it continues on. Here it breaks and continues on elsewhere. Okay, same thing with this one. And the reason is because we didn't style this area first. So we're supposed to style this area first before doing the tube approach. So that's the reason why the green light breaks. Let me increase the intensity. You can increase the intensity here. Intensity, as you can see. You can also increase or decrease the porcupine down here. Right, the red lines, how dense it is. So again, this is not a good example of curvature continuity. Again, it's because I didn't style this area nor this area down here. But it does show us tangent continuity. All right. And now let me do a porcupine on this one here. I'm going to extract this edge. Let me go back to, close. Let me go back to generative shape design. And I'm going to extract this edge here. Okay, so let me use, I can use multiple extract if you have that command available, multiple extract. So I'm going to extract this one. And I'm going to say tangent continuity. There it is. It extracts everything. Or we could just use extract and it would have extracted everything instead of multiple extract, but either one works. Hit OK. So now let's do an analysis on this one, porcupine. Okay, so we are in generative shape design. Let's see if we have the porcupine here in this option. Yep, we do have porcupine. So let's do porcupine. on this multiple extract, which was actually one extract, but here it is, multiple extract. Notice the difference in the green lines. That's what we want to see. We don't want to see a break on the green lines. See how it transitions over. So this is telling us here that we do have beautiful curvature continuity. Notice how it didn't stop. It actually continued on. And now that we have an inflection point because it changes direction, but this is what we're looking for. We're looking for a nice curvature continuous green line. Actually, we should say a green line that doesn't break, telling us we have curvature continuity. Now it does change direction, right? And it goes in the opposite direction, and it's linear. So this red porcupine here goes down forever, right? Because it's linear. But we do want to see that green spike up to connect to its opposite, guaranteeing curvature continuity. All right, so let me go ahead and cancel out of that. All right, so I will continue to post more videos, and I will show you a video of how I created my student project, right? Back in 2005. And I've always wanted to do that, recreate it. So I will post a video on my second attempt on recreating my student project from 2005. And hopefully I'll make some improvements on it. And those of you that want to just look at the approach of how to create curvature continuous surfaces, and in some cases you do prefer to use tangent continuity in some areas, but I'll demonstrate that in a separate video. And I'll also continue making more videos on how to do some Class A surfacing on the exterior of a vehicle. So I will walk you through step by step on how to create, for example, the rooftop of a vehicle, and how to use some commands that we haven't covered, like the combine command, to help us generate top surface for the rooftop of a vehicle. All right, so that's the end of this video. See you in the next one.